What's good, everybody? It's King here. Hope you guys are having a great day. Hey, see by the title, I'm be talking about a debate slash discussion, but also from a power scaling discussion that has not been thoroughly explained to me across the entire Elden Ring and Souls community. Radahn, son of Rennala, Queen of the Full Moon, and Radahn of the Golden Order, versus his half-little sister, daughter of Radahn and daughter of Queen Marika. A battle slash case of big, iconic event that happened in the Elden Ring universe that has been argued ever since the game's release. I feel like there's been a decent matter of videos that have in detail explained why one or the other, to some credit, is over the other and other things, but no one has actually gave a definitive, in-depth, cool, definitive answer. And I'm not trying to act like I'm better than anyone else. I just feel like it is an interesting case of discussion. It is something that I've debated about, talked about, deeper went about, trying to unravel and understand. And I'm hoping in this video, as I will usually be prone to do, I can concretely, thoroughly, definely, concisely, and for the most part profoundly actually explain who overall, with everything to be talked about within their base, their history, the events, the context, was truly stronger than the other. I hope you guys will enjoy the video. If you have enjoyed my content, please like, share, and subscribe. If you don't mind, comment down below if you want more of these. And yeah, let's go and get it in. To go ahead and explain the battle between Radahn and Malenia, we must explain the actual lore context. I've talked about lore before over Elden Ring on this channel, and there are forms of lore involved in the case of, just verses was being said. So, the best way I guess I can go ahead and explain it is the conflict. The conflict inherently is sparked by the shattering. Okay, the shattering being the case of the pretty much spark and fuel to have big, erratic war and conflict. Just explain a little bit at the beginning of the game, not in the most defined way to my T, to fully get you full immersed, I guess, to a degree, but kind of it's more of an explanation for how the world has been thrown in so much of disarray, which is goodly explained, right? But simply put, it was from the fact that Queen Marika slash Radahn externally basically shattered the life source of the lands between, opening all different type of cans of worms and basically throwing the world into disorder. And chaos then plagued fully out after the after effect of it. Queen Marika wanted to counter slash pretty much rebel against the Golden Order, the Two Fingers, and incarnate what was going on. She felt like the order was not suiting her means no more, especially after her thrown into big depression after the loss of Godwin, which was her firstborn and was the catalyst for pretty much the downfall of the lands between as we know it to be, right? After his demise, that then course for her to want to go ahead and shatter the Elden Ring. But then her better half, Radahn, aka her husband, as they got turned into one in one because of the greater will, aka Elden Beast, or the Elden Ring, or life itself, formed them into be so they both could be pawns of their greater means as being the greater will. She wanted to rebel against that. Radahn, being a slave to his honor, wanted to go ahead and stamp his foot down on the call to try to rebuild the Elden Ring, which is why he slash Queen Marika willed a forge to smiting like hammer. With that being said, that is the catalyst for it. But why Malenia and Radahn started fighting for multiple reasons. The shattering was a long war that was so long lasting, it went on for way more than the general possible qualm of war. It went on for years on end. I'm talking beyond the general stand of like a general credit of like, land scope war. I'm talking hypothetically for Malenia. It's just because the timeline of Elden Ring is very mixed. We don't know when everything exactly happens, but we do have a clear set structure of things to say hypothetically inevitably this, but not very clear cutter this. But it is where we get to the next section. Being simply put, why was Malenia and Radahn fighting? I'm going to start with Radahn because Radahn is a lot more simpler. Radahn was this valorant, profound warrior, and when Caelid was in its prime, a malevolent, beautiful, dang near Zootopia-esque land, in the case with animals, people, and great glossper and things, more akin to utopia and greater profound things. He was their general, the greatest warrior, son of Renala, queen of the carrion worlds, and queen of the full moon, with great case of, exceptional training, skills, magic use, skill, power, being son of Radahn, champion of the Golden Order, and later to be, the technical second Elden Lord. In truth, he's the third, right? But he had great reputation, pretty much said the least, as what Sir Gideon would say about Renala. Gideon.
The Academy of Rhea Lucaria lies to Limgrave's north, towering over the mist-laden lands of Liurnia. Renala is queen of the Carian royals, who govern the Academy, but Renala herself is no demigod. Her beloved Radahn left her to become Queen Marika's second husband, taking the title of King Consort. The Great Rune dwells within the amber egg that was Radagon's gift to her.
Passing the teachings of what his mother could grace him with, and same time arguably upscaling and upforming in the matter of skills and capabilities more than his little sister Ranni and little brother Rykard. I only say he's the oldest from a mixed bag of how he's like revered and hailed. No one's actually confirmed to be the oldest, so I say that more as that's my headcanon, so take that or leave it. His size shouldn't, indicate that he's the oldest, but mixed perception. If you perceive like me, Radahn holding heritage from fire giants are the only people to show the ginger, hair and size, and the fact that fire giants like Jotunar Titans, are not always meaning to be big in size. So yeah, simply put, that's what that means, right? So with all that being said, yeah, that training, great reputation, and great glory to uphail, he wanted to be to the most top of it. But in truth, he really wanted to go ahead and live up to the heights of his famed hero, Godfrey, first Elden Lord, chieftain of the Badlands and the Axe of Queen Marika, the most mightiest warrior, feared and glorious warrior across the lands between. With all that glory to be hailed, he, again, in his own words, like he said to the case of, his master, which I was going to get to, wanted to pretty much do what was seen before, but more beyond. In his own words to his master, he pretty much said, "I thank you for your tutelage. Now I may be able to conquer the stars." He geared up with his preset armor that will be kind of have be seen in the case of his console Radahn look, or even in the intro of the game, in the case of his younger, scar, big beast, feline like fur, trying to replicate the look and design of Godfrey's armor with his iconic lion beast known as Sarash. He wanted to go ahead and honor that, and he said himself that now he is the king of the battlefield's lion. He was so glorious that his brother Rykard put him as a memorial case of inspiration, since in the case of his, castle, aka Volcano Manor, as pretty much a example representation of what a Chad or beast would be doing. Radahn would eventually conquer the stars, and he would basically tame them and tame the greater vast capabilities of the universe, control all matter of stars to be hailed and claimed, and this capability would be higher form shown in the ending with Ranni, but pretty much he pulled all type of vast galactic plus level capabilities and power scope more than anyone else, making this man have, if we want to power scale, multi-solar system to galaxy plus beyond capabilities and quantum of pool of stars, and what was shown in his case of ending and his death and all that with his first boss is just crazy, right? I mean, he was just a beast when it came down to magical control, but he also wanted to learn gravity magic for his steed Leonard, who he was ridiculously way more bigger than, and Radahn, being alarmingly large, pushing 40 feet tall, did that even with having feet to go ahead and not crush his beloved steed. And so Radahn, again, entire purpose was always just to do way beyond. But Radahn, it was obvious, began to have great deal of pride and was too ambitious. Not violently, grotesque, or devilishly ambitious, or not blasphemy ambitious, or had gluttony for power like his brother Rykard. He didn't have a scarring case of envy to another person and wanted to always reach to those heights and could never accept it and always felt in self-doubt. And he definitely didn't have a ego the size of Limgrave, to say the least. But he had a lot of pride, and so when it came down to fighting and or taking territory, he had no problem taking that territory and really stamping his foot down on any opposition that got in his way. Radahn would go on to go ahead and fight in the Shattering and made someone like Godric, great grandson of Godfrey, basically piss his pants and hide from the big malevolent beast. But it was more when he was younger and he went to the doorsteps of Leyndell and fought in the greater Shattering, where his mighty claim of being mightiest demigod of the Shattering came. He's a demigod of great proportions, son of Radahn, who gives him his god essence, corresponded with Rennala being immortal, and him having great skills and power to pretty much level the playing field of the greater run of arsenal and acclaimed fighting of Leyndell such as Plateau to his Redmane soldiers, who fight with fury and will just as their general. He was defeated by Morgott, but this, instead of pushing Radahn to kind of stay in his quote-unquote place, it kind of instilled a greater fury in him. He wouldn't just let Morgott's defeat of him push him by, especially because before this, mixed interpretation is getting, into another form of headcanon, even though it's mixed supply by things I'm going to speak about now, and account for how Morgott describes every other take of, person of a, royalty or territorial command, right? Is by the fact that because Godwyn the Golden, when he was king of Leyndell or surrogate monarchy stand, as technically true king would be the father Godfrey, but Godfrey was banished before this time. It's said that Godwyn brought all of the demigods together to have a meeting of greater means, right? And by the case of the thrones shown in Morgott's second boss fight, it would reasonably give that he was there. It's kind of mixed again, getting into a mixed, vague, and plague of very much like unknown, not very concretely defined, explained lore by Elden Ring, right? Because Miyazaki and the rest of them don't really care to give us greater in-depthness on that part. But it's the fact that Morgott described all of these demigods as willful traitors, spurned by the false means of ambition.
Graceless, tarnished. What is thy business with these thrones? Ah, Godric the Golden. The twin prodigies, Miquella and Malenia. General Radahn, Praetor Rykard, Luna Princess Ranni, willful traitors, all.
So Morgott probably already disliked Radahn from the fact that he can capably, do what he needs to do in reputation and in physical, and Morgott can't. Tied with the fact that he's trying to still honor that he doesn't deserve. Also with his pride. Morgott not liking, that would make Radahn not like him. False king, false dude, and an omen. Something disgraced upon and most importantly probably weak in Radahn's eyes. Radahn would grow bigger from this and more skilleder, more powerful, and even in the War of the Shattering and all type of conflict, Caleb, as him being the general and this being, his home and having his own castle, would make it be reigning undefeated for years on end. But the fact is that simply put, even with all this being said, there would still be a problem. Being the problem that he failed to take the Altus Plateau. And Mix, again, kind of headcanon, but kind of shown with the arsenal, that Redmane people have in comparison to Altus Plateau, and Mix shown from the trailer and looking at the battlefield, they could put very severe numbers and same time, artillery pressure on the Altus Plateau in case of a rematch, as they already left a great severe form of damage. And obviously the Redmane soldiers / army was not the only army to be fighting in the war, but because of Radahn actually being in a big conflict with Morgott, right, there's a reasonable vow / mix of assumption to say that they were on similar cusp levels at this point. As again, remember that Morgott will most likely have envy for him because he actually has more capable reason to be this, more capable to do this on a reputation and physical scale. And with that being said, Morgott was not going to let that slide, and he was trying to kill him during the fight. This is where we finally get to the talk of his little half-sister, Malenia, Blade of Mikola. Malenia, being the daughter of Radahn and Queen Marika, would obviously be a demi-goddess, right? Half mortal, half god, but obviously being, in the case of goddess Stan, Radahn would most likely give that claim of, mortal half, as Radahn and Queen Marika's children, timeline-wise, are a mixed bag, even though the first Golden Order, aka basically being, Godwyn, Morgott, and Mohg, are said to be at least the first generation, to say the least, I guess, in the family tree. They most likely were birthed in the mix of Radahn being mixed credit of being either being mortal or being able to switch between being mortal and god because of Queen Marika's blood / being arguably made into a god because of the blessing of the Golden Order. This would basically mean that he would go out his way to have children with his new wife to basically set a new stage for the Golden Order, or something of that akin. Malenia was cursed and also blessed with the capabilities of being a very skilled, unparalleled fighter, but was cursed with the power of an outer god, and not in a good way. This is rot, aka the scarlet rot, aka basically a disease more effective than the case of the Radahn virus, and basically is stage 69 brain cancer for anyone that inhales that bitch. This is pretty much what it can do in Caelid by the gameplay footage, and it is very destructive, and it can destroy anybody pretty much around. This power is so dangerous and so elite that it arguably is the most powerful form of outer god power besides Frenzied Flame, and was so dangerous that a lot of people feared it, mainly because Malenia was the only person to show it outwardly, and this power was shown to be able to not just to nuke Caelid, but to put Radahn pretty much in a state of mental peril and same time desperation of death, as he was now wandering around in Caelid like a dog in the aftermath, and it scorched, dispersed, and full devastated Caelid, making it look like Florida. And all that count of power, this would make someone like Malenia have self-hatred and be pushed back in the matter of mental and spiritual purpose. But the only person that could feel compassion to this, besides Mixed Bag, her own mother, who wanted to try to make something better for her, but she was cursed by the unfortunate aftermath of her parents being one and the same, and tied with arguable curse by the greater will. She would be given great love and care by her little technical twin brother Mikola, who was also cursed, but unlike Malenia, where it was a lot more devastating and horrid, he was cursed with eternal youth, always looking like a child, but in truth being like over 1,000 years old, basically akin to Cupid or other characters in fiction with eternal youth. What she bigly had loyalty for was not just because of his compassion, but the fact that arguably Mikola tainted her mind. Mikola has the gift of charm, being arguably that he's like the purple man from Marvel, not the purple guy, or in some way a telepath where he can convince people to do what he wants by having an electric charm, making people who have a preset notion of disgust about him, dislike or non-likeness be, bound to his will, right? This was showing the fact that he made Mohg a person who had no relation to him, had no likeness to him, just like Morgott or Godwyn, whoever, changed their ways. resurrecting Radahn and reforming him to be a pawn to his will, even when Radahn had no want to be. And this is because of the fact that Miquella, not just having this curse and gift, right, but also the fact that Miquella, case of, demonic manipulator type activities were being poured through his veins. As Miquella, like I literally just said to rescind my statement, has big malicious, activities going on. And when I say that, in case some people don't know what I mean, when I say that, not to say that in like a dismissive way, but mainly to say that his malicious activities matching with his name, Miquella, is the fact that his maliciousness is the fact that he likes to mimic a more nice, friendly, solemn, valued person approach, shown in the DLC where everybody believes Miquella to be the great giver, the gifter. He comes off as like blonde Jesus, right? But it's all out of the fact that he, Apple of Eden's, possesses people's minds and make them believe falsehoods. He wants everybody to live a life through great joy, compassion, and greatness, but he's a compassionate tyrant. You see, Miquella's whole ideal is that the world of the lands between is flawed. It suffers so much that it needs to have a new creator and new believer. And in this case, Miquella, right, wanted to make that be the case through basically reinventing the world through his image. No free will, only by the order of Miquella, making a cult and basically following throughout the lands between base game and in the land of the Chateau, aka the shadow of the Erd Tree. He then fully wanted to go ahead and ascend to godhood, but he can only do that if he had a consort. And Miquella, like other cases of people in different mythologies, folklore, legend, and religion, would have likeness for his own family, aka have sexual attraction to Radahn, his own older brother. And so he made a prayer to basically have Radahn come and be his consort. But Radahn, by all accounts, was not going to go freely. So he ordered Malenia to go on a marching campaign throughout the lands between, mark her territory, marched from all the way of the Halleck Tree down all the way to Caelid to kill Radahn and anyone in her way to do so. We do not know how Malenia, perceived this, but simply put, regardless, she had no choice. And so she marched down there, making this man Godric pee his pants, as she was seen as a feeble woman to him, and he got smacked up. And then she eventually fought him in the great shattering and plague of the war. This war would rage so long in Caelid that we see the aftermath of not just rot, people becoming zombies, people being decayed, people being diseased, but also the fact that it would go all the way to the red desert lands of Caelid, pretty much akin to desecrated Egypt. In this case, they would fight out there, and we already know how that goes. In this fight, and throughout the war, it was shown not just across her fight in the shattering, which is tied where this takes place, as in the words of Ronnie, these are the two mightiest to lock horns in combat. This would end up being the pretty much last straw of the demigods, as Godric had Stormveil to himself and kind of stayed in an inactive state because Godric would want no smoke. Rykard would be devoured by the serpent and could do nothing more. Godwin was dead. Morgott had to stay as dominant monarch of the caves of, the Altus Plateau. You had Moog, who was also molested mentally by Miquella Diddy over here, and made him kidnap him and basically be possessed to do vile activity stuff in the name of Miquella, taking his dark empire and, blood magic and other causes that now made him do horrid things in the name of Miquella or not, and pretty much went about things only for him. Rennala will be in forever, deprecation and depression because of losing Radahn. There's tied with the fact that Limgrave as a whole would be self-destructive and without order because of the fact of Godric and the Shattering's doing. You have the Altus Plateau half destroyed. And, you know, the mountaintops of the giants pretty much are extinct of a population. There's also a count that anywhere else within the lands between, beyond or not, would have their own problems, with Farmer Zula being a destroyed paradise. You have the fact that in the land of Shadow, Mesmere, in the mix of the Shatterin, correct me if I'm wrong, destroyed half of it to make a point, and just everything was going bad, right? But the thing is that in this fight, it has been said by a common case of director slash producer within Elden Ring that in this fight, Malenia was injured, scarred, and wounded all over, but she would not show that pain, and she would still fight as she had a mission to do, and she would not let it go. Now, Radahn, most likely in mixed headcanon, knew of Malenia. He felt like this fight was not worth it, and he did not want to hurt his little half-sister. As the only god, you know, that he had any case of, you know, possible dislike or disrespect to, want to, you know, be full wrecked, you know, to the fullest, would possibly be his own father, right? And in this case, you know, he and her are not gods in comparison, but I mainly say in this case for the example of who should be actually deserving of his wrath would be, if anything, being a mixed bag, again, headcanon, but because of the fact that Radahn had self-hatred for his hair and his heritage, because of mixed headcanon, again, being kicked out of, you know, the mountaintops of the giant society because he was seen as lesser and like a half-breed or something to call to know that, as again, his hatred of his red hair is so kind of very flimsy and weird from what we know, because he doesn't really have any reason, and, you know, his hair at the end of the game shouldn't be an indication of that, as he was basically half dead for the entire time and was crucified by the greater will because of Queen America's actions. But it seems like he has some type of distinctful hate. So the only possible person that he might also hate in comparison was similar to his red hair, even though Rykard and Ronnie most likely were ginger as well, goes also with Malenia, and Mesmere, of course, would be Radahn, because Radahn's the only person who flaunted his hair in such a unique way. Radahn is the only person who really reveled in the love of the heroic implications of his hair, like his father. But that's just one thing. So again, the only case possible, you know, God that he could hate, right, would be his own father. And the only other demigod, right, that he would also have a great deal of hatred or dislike to would be someone like Morgoth, from, again, the preemptive case of possible setup for their dislike. Radahn, though, right, had great deal of dislike towards his little half-sister for coming to his home and doing all this madness. But even then, Radahn has honor and has pride. So as you see, he lets her put her right arm on, and they get to scrapping, bringing out his two dual great blades and bringing nothing but the hurricane of hatred and at the same time wrathful intention. They fight, they bang out, and eventually throughout all of this fighting, this eventually brings the need for, obviously, the case of, you know, them coming to lock-horn combat, of injuring each other, and eventually Malenia stabbing him and stabbing herself in a mixed bag to go about, you know, blossoming. Radahn seems to be visually confused by this, and Malenia rots, not just rotting this man Starscourge Radahn's brain to the biggest form, giving him stage 69 brain cancer, giving him Parkinson's basically, but taking his great hurricane bliss of rage and making that be the incarnate, the antithesis of his being in full. So with all that being said, that is the context and eventual setup, solution, and course to the unfortunate battle and demise of one of the other people. But the thing is, in this, there's still a little bit of more. So what happens in the aftermath is obviously the fact that Radahn is a draconic, you know, down bad zombie-ish form of person. He's basically dead, and his body's only alive, but his mental and spirit is dispersed. Malenia would be unconscious, knocked out, and down about, but luckily one of her most loyal subjects slash soldiers would go about, you know, helping her and dragging her all the way back home. but at the same time, might be a mixed bag setup and mix as well, arguable subject of kind of mixed if she was carried back simply with only her or being with a group, as a great deal of Malenia / Miquella's army is still there, and a great deal of them have also, expedited to, the other side of the lands between. So, yeah, that's kind of, where the half credit of differences in that moment, at least, right? So, that's, again, the context and the aftermath. So now time to talk about, in conclusion, with all that talk, with all that history lesson, with everything that needs to be said about the record for what was going on. I've explained a little bit of feats and what has been making these characters, so powerful within this. And I've said it multiple times in the case of, my other videos and how I've done things. But I have power scale and talked about the lore of this game multiple times before. Regardless of how mad I get at this game, I still have a decent, great deal of love for it, and I definitely have fallen in love with the greater run of the complex and mixed, very unique, lore / story and as well power scaling of the verse. When it comes down to, how powerful these characters are, I've talked about in my Elden Ring power scaling tier list that I've showed on screen, and I've talked about in deeper fashion. And I will show it for the first time for a greater deal on the screen. And you see the entire catalog of the Elden Ring Pantheon, being put on screen. If you look to specific, Radahn and Malenia, there's a lot to be talked about. But simply to kind of try to explain is that Malenia has, again, a statement, proof in her skill, proof in the showcasing of the fight, that she was able to outdo Radahn and do more. There's also the fact that there's a statement tied with the scan that I've shown that if Malenia was not injured and or weakened in the mix of everything, there could have been a different outcome or just the same, but more in her favor. So with that being said, Radahn, even being older, stronger, and having all this versatility, having the AP reasonable to be multi-solar system to galaxy on a low end, but reasonably should be reasonable regiment of being uni plus, from the fact that he would scale over not just one person that has capability to make a universal pocket dimension, but over multiple demigods and multiple succession to be stronger than, and again having reasonable goal to even have hatred to only one case of godlike person, right? In the case of, his own father, mixed with the fact that his father leaving his mother for Queen America, tied with his mix of dislike and rivalry to Morgoth, the son of Godfrey, would reasonably be scaling over this. Someone like Malenia would do the same, being strong on Ronnie, having all these capabilities to be the same, but scaling to a guy that's again able to do that feat, which then should get her reasonably to those same levels. This, in full conclusion, though, should reasonably make a real difference and reasonable qualm for the fact that Malenia, aka, the Blade of Miquella, the non-defeated swordswoman, she's literally having the claim of never being defeated, never being bested, never put out of commission, having a draw with Radahn that has a great deal of context to her, being Malenia, Blade of Miquella, the undefeated swordswoman, and having great, talks and same time, statements and acclamations about, being the most skilled and arguably proficient warrior in the lands between, and that is very consistent. So base to base, aka in the event, I believe that it's pretty obvious that Malenia is stronger. The only reason why some people like to say that Radahn could have been stronger is because he was holding back the stars. But the thing is that the stars things is only because that is a taming of stars being unloaded upon the planet, and the fact that that's a greater vast deal of power. If he would have released them, there's an argument that it could have changed. Because obviously Radahn's pride and his ego mixed with his hypothetical blood relationship to this woman, he might not want to do that. But Radahn still has reasonable qualm to, even without the uses of the stars, which if we actually take in consideration what a star hit would be to Malenia with the power scaling, it wouldn't change anything. There's the fact that hypothetically if the stars are on the same level as the big, booming, large nuke in his back pocket that hit the lands between, that did a mountain level amount of damage, right? That shouldn't, do anything too severely. So this whole argument that Radahn holding back the stars should do a lot more vast damage than what is it given credit for, I guess you could say, doesn't really make sense and isn't very valuable. It doesn't constitute any difference in actual harm or in some way altitude of, like, I don't know, him holding back so much that it depleted his chances to win, because it's not a battle beast versus Thrag situation. He didn't super nerf himself and divulge the whole fight to being a, dick wanking contest of who's the better man at the same level. It was more, I'm just not going to use this because I feel like I don't need to. Again, it maybe should, be a representation of, I don't know, a man not using his whole artillery in the midst of a war, aka fight, but it doesn't disregard the fact that, again, Malenia has the better skill, alchemades, and a direct feat, slash the case of, a scaling chain as well, to substantiate that she would best Radahn regardless, and she doesn't cheat by using this. I mean, to be fair, these are a lot of people that just speak with fanboyism and mix of just intellectually dishonestness. I mean, him using the stars or not should not, change the fight drastically, should not divert from the end goal with, like, possibilities of Malenia, and it also shouldn't divert from arguably the win possibility of him as well. Basically, all I'm trying to say here is that Radahn using multi-case of stars, meteors, absorbing the sun itself shouldn't drastically, demonstrably dwarf the capabilities of Malenia to nothing, because he doesn't show anything with this to really substantiate any difference. So saying that he is this and this and this is a deliberate case of ignorance and isn't actually true. So again, Radahn using these stars or not shouldn't make a difference. Malenia using Scarlet Rot as a part of her capabilities, and she used it, Radahn didn't, showing that she isn't only arguably more smarter and capable with her capabilities, but the fact that it simply put is a part of her. She unleashes a outer god's power, embodies him in that regard. Granted, they both do survive, and it is a great feat for Radahn, not just only from what it actually does, being that amount of power, but the fact that it's from an outer god that should also supply her with mixed bar universal critique of power. Without being said, with everything being accounted for, that reasonably should get him, right, Radahn, in that same level, and other quarters and shit. But again, it wouldn't change anything about the actual capabilities, as Malenia is still popping off like an anime character, and you still have reasonable gauge and regard of reasonable credence to actually say that they are just kind of relative, but one is clearly the winner by, again, the context given before. When it comes down to him as a youngin, aka young hypothetical prime Radahn, I've talked about before in my tier list and other forms, but basically to reiterate, is that if his feats and acclimates as when he was younger, not young Radahn who fought Morgoth, but the young Radahn in replica to console Radahn, aka the Radahn shown in the painting of Rykard, is anything to be accounted for, as all his feats and acclimates are associated with that version. All of them are talked about, with being that highest grandstand record of, demigod prowess, considered to be the mightiest demigod of the Shattering. That would then give reasonable credence in a motherfucker being, possibly stronger. But again, with everything I just said before, you can consider it to be similar, same regard scale. Finally, we have possibly going to be the thumbnail of, this entire hypothetical, fight, which is going to be, could Consort Radahn defeat Goddess of Rot, Malenia? And I'll say it to you simply. To me, I believe proudly that Goddess of Radahn Malenia and Consort Radahn are two built different record of people with multiple accolades to go ahead and be stronger than ever. First of all, I haven't mentioned it because it really shouldn't matter because of it being relative, but if you want to know their speed from Radahn being able to perceive stars, he would have to be moving at massively faster than light speeds. That makes then Malenia be at massively faster than light speeds. So, yeah, there you go. But, yeah, simply put, they should scale to each other. Their AP should scale to each other. And the only difference is hacks. The hacks of Malenia being all different types of teleportation, mixed bag, precognition, a healing factor, great regression of, pain, as she barely feels any when she's in this state by gameplay, and vulnerability, great sea, of possibilities from not just making clones and rapid succession, capabilities of speed. She has very great proficient, levels of adaptability and recuperation, with not just her skill being in tandem with her capabilities of flight, speed, and basically whipping around like a Sith Lord and basically on that anime Senju shit. She also just has great crafty capabilities of fighting that would allow her to be able to, move to the greatest heights of, faster than the speed of the eye, it seems like, in combat. But with all her skill racked again, with all her capabilities, and like I just said before, to rescind my statement in full, has great capability to see all these different things, has great see of the battlefield from not just flying, but blissing of rot, and is able to, blossom, as she has before, which would do devastating damage. Consort Radahn, taking in the fact that Miquella will be with him, will blessing him with a higher status of god power. He would have capabilities of Moog, as his resurrected body takes some elements of what Moog can do, allowing him to use blood fire magic. He has shown a capability like he can do in general, but faster, fly, use the stars, breathe in space probably, control all aspects of that, fly around, use super speed, teleport, great A levels of strength, and is just a whole beast of multiple proportions. He truly is, at this point, narratively mixed hail to be the strongest demigod. So again, it's contingent. It can go either way, but I believe that Consort Radahn is reasonable to be the strongest motherfucker of the demigods. In conclusion, no. It really shouldn't matter who is better. It really shouldn't matter who wins. But if I had to say, yes, Malenia is stronger than Radahn most of the time, from everything that's been shown, everything that's been stated. But I will say this, though. To me, it doesn't matter who wins. At the end of the day, Elden Ring's mainline story seems to be subsequently over. It doesn't really matter who wins and who's not going to win. They're both lovely characters, and we should appreciate them for who they are and not be overly pressed about who can beat who can beat that. And I just hope that you guys have learned something. I've talked for a very long time. Probably going to be a lot of editing to go and talk about in the grand regard of what's happening. And yeah, I just hope that you guys, have enjoyed. Appreciate you guys for watching this long. If you have, it's been a minute since I did a very long video like this, at least in this context of being a more in-depth critical record of video, because I've made long videos of tier lists or other things of that sort, and this is kind of getting a little bit too much of a back-to-back occurrence of putting so much thought into the critical baseness, especially in one try, like shit, in case it isn't obvious. But yeah, I mean, this has pretty much, been another great, evaluation talk and in-depth discussion. I'm hoping I educated a few of you. I'm hoping that you guys will take the better information of this, get educated yourselves. If you enjoy Elden Ring content, please like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. And yeah, I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Peace.